Welcome to this teaching video. It's Dr. Paul Donovan here, and today I want to give you some really helpful practical hints around how to be experienced as an empowering manager versus a disengaging one. It's a critical distinction for any leader, and it's all about how you're using your power. How you use your power will in fact determine and directly influence whether other people experience you as empowering or disengaging. There's a very powerful polarity that we're going to be talking about now, and where you are on that polarity has massive implications on your success as a manager. So we're going to talk about why that is and some really useful practical hints. So strap in, let's go for it. Now today I just want to let you know we're talking about this scale because it's one of 7 scales from the Diamond Power Index. Now I like this particular framework to talk about power because it is really holistic. It gives us some really useful means around how to picture and imagine better use of power and what poor use of power looks like, and a framework to give you practical hints. But we're looking at the third one today, disengaging versus empowering. So what is this scale about and how can it help you as a manager? You see, if you're experiencing as disengaging of others, then you won't be experienced as motivating, that's for sure. And it measures the degree to which you are giving clear expectations to others on their task, role, and whether you foster the development of others. So a very important scale. Do you want to be a manager who is experienced as giving clear expectations, who is fostering the development of others, and thereby a motivating kind of manager? Do you want that? If you do, you're far likely to engage your people and gain better outcomes from them. The Gallup research on this is clear. Engagement levels predicted performance in virtually every area of the business. The two have a very high correlation, engagement and performance. There is now a wealth of data, but no more powerful than there is from the 1 million managers and their associated businesses that the Gallup people looked at some years ago and reported in that brilliant book, Now Break All the Rules. So engagement is critical and it predicts performance. So let's go on to see this particular, if you're experienced as disengaging, well, you're not being experienced as one who is responsive to the needs of others in relation to clarity on their role and their expectations or their ideas and suggestions of others. You are really relatively distant and remote to their work. Is that because you're lazy? Well, possibly. But more likely, you're just fully distracted, fully engaged in your own work. You are disengaged from the needs of others in your team that they have in relation to their work. So let's move on. If your experience is somewhere in the middle of the scale, you have room for improvement in being experienced as someone who wants others to succeed. And of course, if you're right up that end, then people experience you as interested, as giving feedback, of clarifying roles, giving credit for where work is done, and someone who is interested in seeing the growth of others. And this is the sweet spot. This is where we want to be experienced as managers, and your capacity to be experienced as empowering has massive implications on the performance of those reporting to you. It's a big deal to be experienced as empowering versus disengaging. But what's this got to do with power? How is it a misuse of power? You see, those managers who do not get experienced as empowering are using their role to actually become remote to the needs of their teams to succeed. Either because they're just not caring, they're unaware of the need, there can be any array of reasons. Often, in my experiences, with managers who were simply feeling like they're just in over their heads doing their own work, who are struggling to keep up with all their own work that they have to do, that they no longer fulfill the obligation they have to them to give team members clarity on their expectations. They are the manager, and it is your obligation to give clear expectations to others to others who are working for you on what you expect of them, what you want their role to deliver, and to attend to their developmental needs. If you are a manager who's not doing that, you're utilizing your freedom as a manager to simply bypass it all. And remember, it's very hard to give you feedback up. Your rank makes that more difficult. Even if you think you're a good guy or a great manager and you think, I'm working hard and I really like my people. I'm sure both of those are true. But it's very difficult for them to give you feedback if they're not doing this well. So right now, I'd like you to just draw a line along the page and consider, where might you be experienced? What degree of attention in your week do you give to giving feedback on people's performance, informally and formally? So, and how clear do you make your expectations? How often do you talk about their developmental needs? And do you look to shape work to meet those developmental needs? All right, let's keep on going. So what are the outcomes that you can expect? Well, there's a lack of clarity in roles, people spending lots of time. If you're experienced as disengaging, then people will be doing things that actually aren't helpful. There'll be little or no growth. There may even be burnout. But at the other end and empowering, well, that's where the teams are motivated and engaged. You need this now. You need teams that are motivated and engaged. Most of the most challenging problems you're dealing with cannot be solved by one person. They need a collective mind on them. And if your team is experienced this way because you're empowering, then you're more likely to meet the needs. Your team is more likely to meet the business challenges ahead of you. So now let's get to the practical bit. What are you going to do? If you're experienced as disengaging, then what's your next step? Okay, your next step is this. Get clear on the expectations you have of each person. Think clearly. Do you really know what you expect? Do you know when you start to get disappointed with what they're delivering to you and when you're satisfied? And have you clearly written that down, made it something that your team members can access and communicated it? It's an essential obligation you have as your role. You are obligated to do that as a manager, truly obligated. And it's fun, but it's challenging. Meet with it, and if you think you're somewhere in the middle, then my advice to you is a little differently. You've already done the work that I've just mentioned. So now it's time to schedule regular forums where you can meet with people to give feedback on their activity. In the Deloitte research that came out a couple of years ago across the many thousands of managers, they discovered that their most effective managers were giving feedback to their reportees at least once every 6 days. Once every 6 working days is actually how it worked out. So broadly, think about it. They were giving feedback to the people who reported to them about once a week, informally often. Hey, by the way, I liked the way you made that presentation or did that piece because it really articulated well our needs in. Or I really, and so notice it's positive, it's supportive feedback, or it's critical feedback. Hey, by the way, I was in that meeting with you last week, but I noticed you said very little in relation to this topic. And I'm counting on you in your role to voice the needs of the business in that area, but you are unusually quiet. So at that moment, I want to let you know I was wanting something more from you. See, and not to do that means that we do not get the needs of our business voiced in the right forums. Can you see these are just short conversations, but they're critical and they need to be happening regularly. And managers who do that are managing to widen their awareness beyond what they have to do in their own roles. And if you're experienced as empowering, well, here's what I'd like you to do. Really take the next step. Think about what the true developmental growth edge for each person is in your team. Some people like to call this the one big thing. In that great book, Mastering Leadership and Scaling Leadership by Bob Anderson and Bill Adams, I love the way they talk about the one big thing. And they're not the only people to talk about it, by the way. I just happen to like the way they do. But each person needs to be able to know what is their area of growth. Robert Keegan talks about this as well in his books about the development of people at work. And it's a brilliant idea. Every person who reports to you needs to know what is their growth area. Where are they vulnerable and where do they need to grow? That if they did grow in that area, they'd be taking their performance to the next level. This is not something you just tell each employee. You sit down and work out with them what it is. And then you can begin to navigate and shape work so that it can meet that developmental need and cause them to grow. Your most talented employees have a high need for growth in their role. They're expecting you to support them in that need. And if you do not meet that need, they are at risk of flight. So please, just your high-performing employees, don't ever think that because they're high-performing, you can just let go of them and think about something else and the people who are more troublesome. In actual fact, for every dollar of time you put into those people, you'll get 4 or 5 or sometimes 10 times back what you invest. So what do you give those people? Consider what their one big thing is, the growth area that they have, and consider how to shape the work to support them and give them feedback regularly in that area. Do it compassionately and honestly. These are the ways to be experienced as empowering. I hope you're taking notes because this is such great practical feedback for you to know how to be experienced. Now here's a little exercise to finish this short video. Just draw a line down the bottom and write, disappointed with performance down one end and really satisfied with performance at the other. And the people who report to you, just sprinkle them along that line. Now I know it's a tricky thing to do because there'll be some parts of each person's role you're very happy with and maybe not so happy with other parts of their role. So this is a rough estimate, I know, but I would like you just to consider where that you, in your mind, where they fall on that line. Who is down one end versus the other? And for the people who are down this end, I'd like you to ask this question. Do you think they know that they're down this end of the line in your mind? Would they know that? I'd like to ask you, how long have they been down there? I'd like to ask you to consider how much time have you spent with them clarifying your expectations of their role, giving them feedback of when they're below the expectations you have and in what aspects are they above. This is one of the most important needs you have, and before you get into any fancy pants coaching, at least make plain what your expectations of them and where they are exceeding and where they're below. This is a really critical, simple first take. First take. Those managers who are experienced as empowering look at this kind of information regularly and plan their conversations with their teams. So we're near the end. I hope you found this very helpful. That's a very useful, quick take. And because remember, this is a very critical polarity. If you want to use your power well, in this regard, to become a manager who is experienced as empowering, then take your eyes off your own job for a little while and take your eyes onto the needs of those who report to you especially, and potentially peers as well, so that you could consider what feedback they need from you, how you can clarify your roles and the expectations you have of them, and foster their development, especially by shaping the work that they do. Okay, I hope you've enjoyed this video. It's got a lot of helpful hints into it. Go for it, everybody, and I'll see you on the next video.